Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Spellbinders' brand new wax seal collection. I'm using their starter kit, which includes the silicone mat, the wax warmer, the spoon, one of the wax seal stamps, and also 100 gold beads. The tealite is not included, so that is something you'll have to pick up separately. The wax seal stamp that's included has the sentiment "for you." So go ahead and get started by melting some wax. I'm adding 4 of the beads, which is recommended by Spellbinders, but you can definitely play around to see if you want more or less wax. I'll place the spoon on top of the warmer and let that wax melt. And I have sped this portion up quite a bit, although it really only took a few minutes for the wax to completely melt. When the wax was about halfway melted, I took a toothpick and I'm stirring it up, and I'll let that melt just a little bit more. You do want to watch to make sure the wax doesn't start to bubble, because it could be getting too hot, and you can always lift your spoon so it's a little bit higher from the flame. I'll stir it up again to make sure there aren't any chunks of wax in there. And now I'll pour this directly onto the silicone mat. And I find it easier to keep this spoon low to the mat. You don't need to lift it up high. So I'll just pour that out slowly. Now I'll take the wax seal stamp and place it onto that wax puddle. And you don't want to press it into the wax, you just want to lay it gently and allow the weight to do all the work. I did try to center it so I have that nice ring of wax going all around the stamper. And I let that sit there for maybe 10 or 15 seconds. You'll know it's finished when you can easily pull away the stamper and the wax isn't still holding on. So there it is, all finished. I love how this turned out. So now we'll do another one. This time I'm using 2 different colors of wax beads. I have fuchsia and pearl white, and I did 2 of each color. I'm also using the Sending a Hello wax seal stamp. So I'll place my spoon onto the warmer. Now when I'm stirring it with a toothpick, I'm not stirring it all the way. I'm trying to keep the white and the pink separate. Once that's all ready, I'll pour it onto my mat. And this time I started off in a circular pattern, then I poured out the rest in the center. I love this swirl look with the pink and the white. If you do stir it together, you would just get a lighter pink color. I'll place my stamp on top, and I got that nice ring of wax around the outside. And of course, that is a personal preference. I like the look with that wax ring. I'll let that sit there for a few seconds and I'll remove it and look at the beautiful results. I'll do one more wax seal before getting into my cards. To remove the leftover wax from the spoon, it's easiest to do when it's hot. And I just used a few layers of paper towels. But warning you, that spoon gets super hot, so do be careful. I'm going to look for a small silicone spatula. I think that would make it even easier to get the wax out of the spoon. For this wax seal, I'm using just the pearl white color, and I have a Merry Christmas stamp. I'll gently lay that on top of the hot wax, then I'll remove it, and I have this beautiful Merry Christmas sentiment. To really make that sentiment pop, I'll use one of the new metallic paint pens from Spellbinders. They have 3 different colors. I have the rose gold color, and they also have gold and silver. This is a brand new marker, so I do need to get the ink flowing to the tip. To do that, you simply press that white tip onto some paper. Once you start to see the paint, you know it's ready to go. Once you get the paint marker started, it's really easy to use. You just lightly touch the tip to the areas on the wax seal that you want highlighted. So now that Merry Christmas sentiment with the pretty foliage around it really pops. Now I'll go ahead and get started on card design number 1, and I'll be using a variety of different products from the new Sealed by Spellbinders release. For my first card, I have some craft cardstock for the background, and I added a white watercolor splatter. I'll put some ATG tape on the back and layer this piece on some black cardstock. Then I'll add it on some beautiful white pearlescent cardstock. And this is from Spellbinders. They have black and white and they're beautiful. I'll put my card front onto a card base. Now using some more of the white pearlescent cardstock, I'll cut a little snowy hill and I'll adhere that to the bottom of the card. This will be a Christmas card with some fun pink trees. And I cut these out using the new Sealed Christmas Tree Squiggle die set. There are 2 dies for the tree. One is the full tree with the trunk and the other is just a partial, so you can add extra branches to your tree. I used the same pink cardstock, but one side has a pearlescent finish. For the full tree, I'm using the non-pearlescent side, and then for the smaller piece, I have the pearlescent side. I'll add the tall trees down first, put 1 on the left side, 2 on the right side. The tree images are very thin, so it does help to use a pair of reverse tweezers, and the liquid adhesive I'm using is Barely Art liquid glue. Now I'll add the top portion of the tree with the pearlescent cardstock. When adhering it down, I'll make sure to line up the tip and also the trunk of the tree. For the 2 trees that overlap on the right side, it probably would have made more sense to do the full tree on the very right and then add the tree next to it. Because now the branches are overlapping, so it doesn't really look like that tree all the way on the right is further back. But I still think it works out. I'll be adding a pink Merry Christmas wax seal. But first I'll add the new sealed twine die cut. I cut out 2 pieces, and this is such a fun set. It has the circle area where you can add your wax seal, or you could also do a stamp sentiment there. And it has all those thin strips going off to the side to make it look like your card's been wrapped with twine, although it's just paper. I'll glue all of those down, flip over my card to trim off the extra. Once I trimmed off the extra portion, I noticed one of the twine strands was lifting up, so I did add a small drop of liquid adhesive. Then to adhere the wax seal onto the card, I'm putting a large amount of Barely Art liquid glue and then pressing that seal in place. And once the glue dries, that wax seal isn't going anywhere. Then to finish off the card, I'll add some white glitter stars to the top of my 3 trees. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 1. I love the fun pink trees, and you can never go wrong adding pink to a Christmas card. Now moving on to card number 2, I'll be doing some hot foiling using the new geometric optical background die from Spellbinders. And I did the hot foiling off screen just to save on time in the video. I used some of Spellbinders' new pearlescent white cardstock, and it hot foils beautifully. I'll layer that piece on some red cardstock, then layer it again on some green cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base. This card will feature the new Sealed Holiday Squiggle die set. I cut out the snowflake pieces from some gold holographic cardstock. Then I have a red bow, a green star, and the other little squiggle piece looks like it's red, but it's actually green. The cardstock I use is 2-sided. I'll put liquid adhesive on the back of all of the die cut pieces and adhere it to the background of my card. I am placing an acrylic block on top for some added weight while that glue adheres. I put the 2 snowflakes down first, then I'll add the red bow. When I prepped the card, I had intended on putting the red bow in the center, but then when I'm assembling the card, I saw I had another red piece, so I wanted to put the green in the center and the 2 red on the sides. But then I realized the squiggle piece was the double-sided cardstock, so it really was green, not red. But since I had already adhered the bow on the left, I had to put the other 2 pieces in the center and on the right. But I did use 2 different shades of green cardstock for the squiggle and the star, so I think it still worked out. Next, I'll add the Merry Christmas seal. Put a bunch of liquid adhesive on the back side, and I'll place my acrylic block on top to let that adhere in place. Then to finish off the card, I'll add some of Spellbinders' new pearls. This is the Fashion Poppy color. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. Now moving on to card design number 3, and this is my favorite card. I used the new wood grain background hot foil plate from Spellbinders, but instead of hot foiling, I used it to emboss some craft cardstock. I also added some brown ink to the outside edge of that panel for a little extra detail. I'll adhere my card front onto a card base. Now I'll bring in some of the new die cuts. I used 2 different sets, the sealed leaf Sprigs and also the sealed Squiggles. I cut out the leaf Sprigs from some dark green cardstock, and I cut out the 2 white squiggle pieces from some of the white pearlescent cardstock from Spellbinders. I'll put liquid adhesive on the back and adhere all of them on the left side of the card. I love the contrast of the dark green and white against the craft cardstock background. Just put one final leaf sprig down. Then I'll add the sealed twine die cut piece, and I cut this out from some gold mirror cardstock. And I think because of that finish, it really curled up that die cut piece quite a bit. So I'll place my acrylic block on top. Now I'll add liquid adhesive on the second piece, overlap those circles, put my acrylic block on top again. Once those are adhered in place, I'll flip over my card and trim off the extra. For sentiment on my card, I'm using the new sealed sentiment stamp set. I stamped out Just Because on the same craft colored cardstock, and I'll adhere that in the lower right hand corner. Now I'll work on another wax seal. I'm adding 1 gold and 3 of the pearl white, and I'll mix that up. Pour it out on my silicone mat. The stamper I'm using is the 1-inch solid circle. Now before I place that stamper on top, I'm adding some gold chunky glitter. I'll sprinkle just a little bit on top of the hot wax. So now I'll add the stamper, and once that's all finished, I have this beautiful light gold wax seal with some beautiful gold glitter chunks in it. And I'll adhere that in place using some liquid adhesive. So there is my finished card, and I just love how this one turned out. Now moving on to card design number 4. I used the new geometric optical background hot foil plate, and I did the hot foiling on some more white pearlescent cardstock from Spellbinders. The Glimmer foil is a beautiful rose gold color. I have several die cut pieces. I used the sealed leaf sprig die set, sealed Squiggles, and also the sealed twine. The 2 squiggle pieces I cut out from some light pink cardstock. For the flower, I used some rose gold satin mirror cardstock, and I used some dark green cardstock for the leaf sprigs and also the sealed twine. I'll adhere all of the image pieces on the left side of the card. Then I'll add the twine at the bottom with the circle going right on top of all of those stems. Then I'll flip over this panel to trim off the extra twine pieces. I'll put some ATG tape on the back and layer this panel on some dark green cardstock. Then I'll put my card front onto a card base. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. For the wax seal I'm adding to this card, I used the Teal Wax Beads and also the Mystic Butterfly Wax Seal stamp. And I'm using the rose gold paint marker to really add those fun highlights to the butterfly, moon, and star images. And I'll adhere that in place using some liquid adhesive. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 4. I think the rose gold, teal, and dark green look so pretty together. Now moving on to card design number 5, and this is another favorite of mine. I used the Woodgrain background hot foil plate on some craft cardstock. The Glimmer foil has this beautiful teal iridescent color. I cut that out using an oval die from Spellbinders. It's from their Fluted oval die set. Then using the same oval die set, I cut out a larger oval from some white pearlescent cardstock, and I'll add both of those onto some dark teal cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base. Now I'll add a couple of die cuts from the sealed Squiggles die set. The 2 leaves, I used the same dark teal cardstock color, and the flower is from some white cardstock. I'll just adhere all of those in place on the left side of the oval. And I did trim the stems on all 3 of the die cut pieces since I have them a little bit lower on the card. I'll just need to trim the white one just a tiny bit more. For the sentiment, I'm using the sealed sentiment stamp set, and I've already stamped out "Have a Wonderful Day." I'll be adding this white strip across the card toward the bottom. Before adhering it in place, I will add some scrap cardstock pieces on the very right and left side. And I'll also pop it up using some foam dimension. Just remove the release paper and adhere it in place. And this card won't feature any of the wax seals. Most of the release you can use without the wax seals. They are a lot of fun, but there's also a die set you can use that looks like the wax seals if the wax isn't something you want to get into. For a little extra touch, I'm adding the butterfly image from Spellbinders Summer Label Motif die set. I cut out the main portion from some light teal cardstock. I used the same dark teal cardstock for the body, and I have some iridescent teal cardstock for the top portion of the wings. I'll put liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to the right of the sentiment. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 5. I love how this card turned out with all the pretty iridescent finishes. Now all of the wax seals I used for my cards, I created individually by pouring it onto the silicone mat. But you can add the wax directly onto paper, and you can even seal your envelopes. So I did want to do a quick sample showing how you can seal an envelope using the wax seal. The process is exactly the same. You'll just pour it onto the back of your envelope instead of the silicone mat. And it is very secure. The wax seals are also flexible, so I don't think there'll be any issues mailing them. Now here's another look at the 5 cards I made using Spellbinders' brand new wax seal collection. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.